Hi, I'm Leif Stevens, and welcome to Cider Blog. In this episode, we're going to take a trip to Lewis Creek Farms to learn about and help graft apple trees. One of the more exciting recent developments here at Noble Cider is that we've formed a juicing company with Lewis Creek Farms and have moved our press line to their farm. We've also partnered with them to grow traditional English, French, and American colonial hard cider varieties. These guys have been growing apples for generations, and they really know what they're doing. Last year, we grafted and planted about 10 varieties in their nursery. This year, we've taken cuttings from those trees, and today we'll be grafting this budwood onto new rootstocks. With apples, every time you plant a seed, you get a new variety of apple. So if you want a particular variety, you have to take a cutting from an existing tree and graft that onto a rootstock. Trey Enlow from Lewis Creek Farms has kindly agreed to answer some questions and explain the whole process of grafting to us. So let's head out to the farm. Why do you graft apple trees instead of planting seeds?
If you took a seed out of an apple and grew it, that apple is pollinated by who knows whatever the bee brings to it. So essentially you have, so say you have a pink lady apple, that pink lady was grown off a pink lady tree, so it has, pink lady genes in it, but who knows what other pollen was brought in there. So you could have a cross between a pink lady and a gala, or a pink lady and a Fuji, or no telling what could have ended up in there. Basically, the only way to get the same apple over and over is through duplicating the exact same genetics. You have a desirable trait in an apple, you want to maintain that desirable trait. The only way to do it is basically clone it. So it's genetically it's exactly the same as the apple before it. So the rootstock manages the size of the tree, and the scion or budwood manages the variety of the tree.
So I saw Bob trimming the roots and cutting the rootstocks. Why does he do that, and what's the process of grafting an apple tree?
So when we get these in, some of the roots are a little woolly. Some of them are very long and unmanageable. So we clip them out, and that does two things. It invigorates those roots, and then it also, when we're planting it, makes them easier. He also uses the saw to make this initial cut, which kind of speeds up the process for us. What we're doing here is bench grafting, and basically you make the correct cuts on this, line them up, and then it heals itself. And so from this point up will be the variety, and this point down will be a rootstock. So the way we're doing is a whip and tongue graft. Essentially you cut a long cut, and then a little tab. You end up with pretty much 4 planes of connection. So it's that pretty much. So, and the only way you guarantee that lives is if that 1 cell thick cambium layer lines up. So if you don't have a point of connection, it won't heal. So you line up the cambium on both sides of the scion and the root, and that causes it to heal. And you got a nice clean connection there. So that's your tree essentially. We'll come back and tape it and then seal it on all the open spots to promote healing, so it don't dry out. But that's what you end up with.
So where does the budwood come from, and what variety of tree are you grafting now?
Right now is a Harry Masters Jersey. It's a cider variety, and we actually took the cuttings off of trees we grew last year. They grew 4 feet tall, and we came in and chopped the top foot off essentially. We come out and just cut it off right at that point, and then from there on, that 1 year growth is the same as 1 year growth in the root. That way you're your cambium layers line up. Genetically, this is the exact same tree as we used last year.
What happens to the trees after you graft them?
What we do is we make the connection, we tape them up, seal them up, and then we place them in sawdust in one of our bins, cover them in sawdust. Essentially, it's like a ICU in a hospital. So you let them heal up for 3 to 4 weeks. And at that point, this connection's healed up, relatively good, and these buds on this upper scion piece usually start to swell up. Some of them even start to break. At that point, that's when we want to get them planted in our nursery. So we plant them all relatively close together in a controlled environment. It's like a nursery for a kid. That way we can take better care of them as opposed to just out in the orchard with the big trees.
How long do the trees stay in the nursery?
We grow them in the nursery for 2 years, typically. Sometimes a year if they do really well, but most of the time 2 years.
Why do you use dwarf rootstocks instead of full-size trees?
A seedling tree is going to produce a very large tree, 20 to up to 40 feet in size, which is difficult to manage. From a labor perspective, you got a guy that's got to work off of a ladder all the time, and it's hard to pick, hard to prune. So with a smaller dwarf tree, we'll plant probably somewhere between 1,000 and 1,200 trees per acre as opposed to 200 on a seedling planting. That gives us a lot higher density planting. We have the tree put a lot less energy into growing itself, so you don't end up with this big, huge trunk. You have, just a smaller, a limb-sized trunk, essentially. And you fill it up with apples and you support it via a trellis. So we're essentially scaffolding the tree. We're building its support instead of it having to grow and build it itself. So you speed up production. You can get to full production anywhere from 4 to 5 years as opposed to 7 to 10 years on a large planting.
I hope you have enjoyed learning about grafting apple trees as much as I did. I'd like to thank Bob, Mac, and Trey at Lewis Creek Farms for letting us come out and visit and for showing us how grafting is done. We're very much looking forward to getting some apples from these trees to make some really great ciders. So look for videos on that down the road. If you've enjoyed this video, please like it and subscribe to Cider Blog for more videos on all things to do with cider. I'm Leif Stevens. Thank you so much for watching.